Good afternoon. Welcome to the June 8th meeting of the Rotary Club of Marshalltown. Again, it's great to have such a great crowd here and enjoying this beautiful day. Dan Bellinga will lead us in the prayer and pledge.
Good afternoon, everybody. If you would bow your heads with me, please. Dear Lord, in this time I pray a prayer for everyone gathered here and ask your blessing on them, that they would be a blessing to others, and that they would find the ability to make the most of their opportunities this day and every day until we meet again. In your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have some guests today. If you would please come forward and introduce your guests.
Good afternoon, everybody. So my tour of parading people through here continues. Last week we had night shift sergeants. Today we have two of our 3 day shift sergeants. So Sergeant Tom Watson is closest to me. And then I think you know Andy, he's been here a few times, Sergeant Andy Cole. So well, Tom's telling you to stand up. So I just got done asking them how many years they have left till they can retire. Tom's got a little over 13. Andy's got a little over 15. So they're going to be here a while. So get to know these guys, future of the Marshalltown Police Department, because this guy has about 3. So I appreciate the work that they do. They do a really nice job, and I thank them for being here today. Thanks.
Thank you. And we're enjoying the parade. So thank you very much. And that's an inspiration for others of us, perhaps. Oh, sorry.
So my guest today is Liv Calloway. She is our new events and marketing coordinator at Marshalltown Area United Way.
Welcome. Do we have any on Zoom? I don't believe we do. No? Okay. Great to have everyone here. In the way of announcements, don't forget to sign the pink sheet. You can sign up for being here today as well as register for next week. Jim Goodman has an announcement. Kim has an announcement, Julie and Rick. So if you guys want to all come up here, we'll save a little time.
Do I go first? I want to remind everybody about the food drive, the Rotary Food Drive, 2nd annual, week from this coming Saturday, the 19th, at the Community Center parking lot, south side there. I put a notice on every table, several of them. What I would like is if you could make an announcement at your church. Now, I've got Baptist church covered, I've got congregational covered. Is there anybody that can do like St. Henry's? No volunteers? Or any other churches, Methodist, Hope? And what I've done with Pastor Verlingula is I've given him a copy of the notice that he's going to announce from the pulpit, but I'd like to get this out to the churches if you can. So the intimate details are on that notice that I put out on the sheet. I also need someone to volunteer with a truck. It would come over like it to the Fisher Community Center at 8 in the morning on Saturday and come back at 1:30 in the afternoon for us to tear down and clean up. We need to get a table or two and one of those, if anybody has a canopy, you know, like, well, you know, those canopies that people like, you see them, take them to football games. I wouldn't even care if somebody brought a Hawk Eye one. But I think that's all. Mary is getting the signs, and we're putting the signs up this Saturday. So you should see the signs up around the Fisher Community Center, and hope for a good turnout and a good result. So thank you.
Okay, I put flyers on the tables, but for those of you online, you can check the WISE website, please do. We are hosting the world's largest swim lesson, and that's going to be next week, June 17th. This is an awesome event. It's supported by the Community Foundation of Marshall County. And because of that, we can offer it free of charge to the community. I do want to mention, though, that registration is required because we are limited to 100 people, but it's 100 people of all ages. And so anybody who wants to get some swimming skills or just get more comfortable around the water, or even if it's people that are already comfortable around the water, you can see we've got a great schedule. The police and fire are going to be part of it. We've got Story County Search and Rescue. So it's going to be a great afternoon, good family activity. If you have a child or know of a child who's under age 8, they do need to be with an adult, but please just help us spread the word.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're starting the changing of the guard will happen in July, so we're looking for new program chairs for next year. So we put a sheet on everybody's desk, and if you would, please, I'd like everybody to seriously consider signing up for a month or maybe getting somebody to help you do co-chairs. So I'll go around and pick them up later. And if we don't get enough people signed up, we'll start asking. Thank you.
Julie Hitchens, Community Foundation of Marshall County. Thanks to many donors, a lot which are in this room. I'm pleased to announce that the Community Foundation is going to be offering duration recovery grants. Those grants are available to organizations that are nonprofits, cities, and government entities. We have about $90,000 to distribute. It's a letter of intent process, very similar to Rebuild and our last grant round. All our information is on our website. Also, I've got a couple of copies here. So if you know of a nonprofit that has experienced damage, that needs some help with recovery, the money can already be spent. So that's that's how it differs from Rebuild. Also, we're looking at rebuilding, but not rebuilding to something better. So those are available. Letters of intent are due June 25th electronically with the foundation. As always, if you have questions, feel free to give me a call at the office. Thank you.
Okay, Todd Steinkamp has the news.
Good afternoon, everybody. So a man walked into this is not a big joke, by the way. A man walked into a Get and Go at South Center Street, Iowa Avenue around 5 yesterday morning and robbed the store in an undisclosed amount of money. The thief did flee on foot. The store employee was not injured. If you have any information, you're asked to contact the Marshalltown Police Department or Marshall County Crime Stoppers. The Marshall County Board of Supervisors would like to get together with the Marshalltown City Council in order to work better together. Supervisor Chair Dave Thompson says it's not a new idea, as quarterly meetings between the two entities used to happen. He says it's not that the county and city don't work together, deciding further agreements between the two boards. Thompson says he has not had any formal discussions with city staff, but has talked with a councilor or two about the concept. He has the other two county supervisors feel restoring quarterly meetings with the city is a good idea as well. There's another special traffic enforcement project, or STEP, that begins tomorrow, focused on impaired driving. The goal is to get the traffic death rate below 300, which has not been done since 1959. The task force reviewed data from the past 10 years and looks for trends that they can focus on. And this time it will be primarily on impaired drivers. Since the beginning of 2021, there have been 118 traffic-related deaths in Iowa, which is up 24 deaths from last year at this time. There is one thing everyone can do to cut the total death total, and that is buckle up. Out of those 118 fatalities, 43% of those fatalities were non-seatbelt wearers. Some farmers had to put seed in their planters for a second time this week. The latest USDA report says some growers in the upper 2/3 of the state replanted corn and soybeans due to frost damage, which occurred in late May. Overall, the report says 96% of the corn has emerged, which is 9 days ahead of the 5-year average. The corn that is up was rated at 77% good to excellent. 1/4 of soybeans remain to be planted heading into the week. 86% of the soybeans have emerged. Soybeans are rated at 73% good to excellent condition. Car dealerships experiencing a shortage of inventory because of a chip shortage that has shut down some auto plants. This is also impacting Iowa used car dealerships. Andrew Miller, who is the general sales manager at Westdale Used Car Superstore, says they are seeing an extremely low inventory level this year. Their lot typically has about 180 cars. They currently have less than 70 for sale. The hope is that the impact will lessen by the end of the year. Finally, sitting behind his new desk for the first time since opening for business, a young businessman spots his first client enter the outer offices. Picks up the phone and starts waving his hands around in the air, pretending to be deep in conversation about figures, business. Finally, he puts the phone down. He says, "Hi, can I help you?" "Yes," said the man, "I'm here to install your phone lines."
Thank you. Thank you, Todd. A reminder that in case you are interested in purchasing some clothing that has a Rotary insignia on it, I do have catalogs up here. You're welcome to look at them. You can always order online if you would like. If you're a catalog person like me and you want a page to really think about it, I have several here, so please stop up and check that out after the meeting today. Happy news. Thank you.
I'll give one real quick. My daughter's first communion was this past weekend, so she is now
Thank you for sharing, Todd. That's wonderful. Milestone for your family. Vic, you were not here last week when I recognized you and Gail for your Community Impact Award. We want you to know how proud we are of you. Very glad that you received it. Anybody else? Yes. Wonderful. I don't know if the people on Zoom heard that, but Kendra just reported that the Marshalltown United Way golf tournament is full and looking to be right on track for a great event. We'll be here on Friday. Anything else? Okay, we are certainly looking forward to hearing our program today. Phyllis Mazur will introduce the speakers.
Thank you, Mary. Good afternoon, Rotarians. With us today, we have two ladies which have been very active with the recovery process following a tornado in 2018 and the derecho in 2020 with the city of Marshalltown. Their leadership following these two major events in our community have been pretty amazing and continue on a daily basis. We are fortunate to have Jessica Kinzer and Michelle Swanheimer with us today. Jessica has been the city administrator in Marshalltown for 4.5 years. She works directly with the mayor and the city council to carry out their policies while managing 7 department heads who carry those policies on a daily basis. Michelle has been with the city for many years. We don't even tell how many, but she is the housing and community development director. She has been with the city actually 20 years. It manages the building division, rental housing inspections, code enforcement, Section 8 rental assistance program, planning and zoning, the lead-based program, and the brownfields program. Please join me in giving them a warm welcome.
It is very difficult to see from over here, so I didn't print out anything, and so we were like, oh, hopefully we can see this. So we'll kind of. Oh, I was gonna say, I think this will work. So I'll have you, yeah. So, so one of the things I wanted to start off with, because talking about disasters and things tend to have some negativity, but I did want to start off with just mentioning a book that I read after the derecho had happened, called The Unthinkable: Who Survives When Disaster Strikes and Why, by Amanda Ripley. And this really brought a whole bunch of stuff full circle for me in thinking about our community, thinking about having been through 2 disasters and really what resilience means. And so I wanted to start with talking about what those 3 things are, and really what that really sounds like and why it's so important. And the thing about resilience is that if we're not resilient, we don't recover well. And so we believe you can be more resilient if you believe that you have control over what is happening, that you find meaningful purpose in life's turmoil, and that you believe that you can learn from both bad and good experiences. And I look around the room and I think about who we are as a community and where we're really going. And I think that really is something that we should all be thinking about. And hopefully the derecho is our last disaster, but perhaps it's not. And so how do we do a little bit better? Okay. Mine's pretty good at printing. So, so thank you, appreciate that. So yes, it does. Thank you. So lesson learned on that one. Don't come without your notes. But I did really want to start off with, this is just a great book, and it really has interviews with lots of other people who have been through disasters far worse than tornadoes and derechos, and how they really had a mentality and an attitude that got them through those and continue to live their lives and kind of persevere in their lives. So Michelle and I are just going to kind of tag team on this, and basically we wanted to just give you kind of an overview of the tornado. It's been a long time since we really talked about that and what that means, and what those numbers look like. So our insurance claim finally closed on that December 31st of this year. The Coliseum was our final project that we needed to finalize. It was also our biggest part of our insurance claim at nearly $3.4 million. And so 5.7, almost $5.8 million of total insurance covered damage from the tornado. That is done and over with, and that file sits in a drawer, and I hopefully never have to look at it. We're very close with FEMA, but I have no idea when it will actually close. The last project that we had with FEMA on that was a street repair project that many of you probably saw in the northeast side of town, Bromley, Woodbury, 4th Avenue, 5th Avenue, to really do some major work in that area. So we're looking at just a little over $2 million with FEMA on that one. And then I'll have it go to the next one. And so we still have some things to figure out with that. You know, our management costs will end up being 5% of whatever that total number was, if it's not $2 million. And so we're looking at having $100,000 there to support the time that Michelle, myself, and anybody else has spent on our FEMA work over the last few years. And $100,000 is not going to cover all of our costs for the administrative time that we've had to spend there. And then the other thing that we have that still has to be applied is donated resources. We had a lot of people volunteer. We had a lot of people donate items, you know, to the community. I keep thinking about the lights that Chief Tupper was able to get from Musco Lighting downtown. You know, that was a donation to us, but it had value. And so then FEMA basically says, we'll basically give you back 75% of that as well. So we still have some things to get figured out, but no timeline for the end of it. So the derecho was definitely a different sort of experience, and you can start to see that on numbers and question marks and other things. And we'll get into a lot some of the differences kind of on the next slide. So we are still open on insurance, and we have not even obligated projects with FEMA, which basically means that FEMA has not said, yes, we agree to these costs and this is what we're going to reimburse you. And so we're still still have an open-ended conversation there. So far less city property damage under our insurance policy. With the derecho, we're at 1.6. That number is going to change just because even today I saw an invoice come in for some fencing repairs in parks, and it was $7,000 higher than the quote we had approved because material prices had changed. So, you know, now we'll hopefully get that $7,000 back. Otherwise, we'll have a conversation. The airport was really our largest location that received damage. And so right now we're at $670,000 worth of work that needs to happen out at the airport. And that's in addition to a new terminal and hangar that's going to be, I think it's under construction currently out there. So the airport's going to be a busy place. I do like to recall how in 2017, you start to remember disasters when you think about how often you've worked with your insurance company. But in 2017, we actually had a fairly significant wind event that hit the community. I think it was in May, because I was in Clinton closing on my house and was getting all these phone calls of, you know, bad stuff is happening. And there was, I think, about $250,000 worth of damage at the airport at that time. So our airport alone on its own on the north side of the community, without much cover, tends to be one that gets hit anytime there is any severe winds moving through the community. Okay. So with FEMA, the big one that is on that list that you can see that's a huge difference, $9.6 million in debris removal compared to 1.4, 1.6 with the tornado. And so that's really significant. That's where we're seeing a lot of our major difference. When you have something that is just an individual area, like the north side of town, versus something that is the entire community, that's where we've seen a lot of our costs increase. We've also got a few other things that we're working on. We have submitted in areas in each of the wards for street repairs, much like we were able to do with the tornado. But we're finding there's some kickback from FEMA right now as to, we just submitted maintenance projects. We didn't actually show that there had been significant damage in multiple areas. So we're still going through a process with them. And then demolition, we really don't have any idea. We're still waiting to hear if we'll have approval there. And then we do work with some Marshalltown Waterworks to submit some of their claims as well. So they've had some issues with this one and some damaging of overhead lines with the derecho to one of the wells. So what remains to be seen is will that $9 million, almost $10 million number change? It would be nice if it would go up, because that means we're adding demolition. That means we're adding street repairs, which are both positive things for the community. So I don't know if you want to kind of talk about this one. Sure.
So again, just kind of comparing the two. So FEMA was approved, the city was approved for public assistance under FEMA for the tornado. We did not receive any individual assistance like we did with the derecho. So that was actually impacting the property owners that were able to go and apply directly to FEMA under the derecho benefits. Maybe some of you, were involved with that or helping and somebody. During the tornado, as Jessica talked about, it was a much more limited area that was hit. It was a very dense area that was hit. And so we saw a lot of significant damage in the structures. We had approximately 2,000 structures, parcels that did have some level of impact. FEMA has a 4-tiered classification for impact, which goes from affected to minor to major to destroyed classification. And so part of our job following the disasters was to go around and actually identify what that classification was on every parcel within the impacted area. So for the tornado, it was that north half of the community. For the derecho, it was the entire community. And so we had 4 teams after the derecho that immediately we deployed out onto the streets with maps, city street maps, going property by property in the cars, up and down every street, and identifying from at least a visual perspective, what was the damage level of those properties in our community. And so we came up with, it was just about 3,000 properties that had some level of damage that was visible basically from the street. And so we know that there are many other properties that had damage that we couldn't see from a car when there was still a tree on it. We assumed the things that had trees on them were damaged, but we know that there's back ends of houses and things like that that had damage that wasn't visible. So I know that there were more than what we had accounted for, but that's what we came up with for the difference, kind of the 2,000 during the tornado to the derecho. We actually had, I would say, more severity with the tornado in properties. And one of the biggest challenges we saw, which we'll talk a little bit more about, was insurance and a lack of coverage or underinsuring with the tornado in some of our areas compared to the derecho, which we generally, in hearing from owners, felt like that there was more coverage that was there on those properties, and they were able to get work done and follow through with things. With the tornado, we saw a lot more lack of that occurring. So with the tornado, that was a brand new process for us, and doing those assessments and determining things. We had never gone through that process. We didn't know what to expect. We deal with dangerous buildings once a year, maybe before that. And here we were tasked with looking at thousands of parcels at once, properties that were major or destroyed classification. We actually went through a whole nother step in having structural engineers hired to go out and do another visual assessment to identify if they needed to be placarded as dangerous. And so that was a very intense process for my staff, for those engineers that we called in to assist with that. To get properties placarded. We didn't begin placarding properties after the tornado until September. I think it was about the 10th or so that we started placarding. And so that was a pretty big length of time in between. There are probably many more that we could have placarded sooner that were able to take care of the damages themselves, whether it be through demolition of a property or repairs that got underway. With the derecho, we learned a lot from the tornado. Earlier we were talking with Phyllis, who said, how many of your staff are going to remain if we have another disaster? I swore I was done if we had another disaster. I didn't leave. But, we learned a lot. And so within the next day, we had our teams out on the street doing those assessments. We had them completed of the entire city within 3 days. We were placarding the necessary properties within a week. And so compared to almost 2 months time from the tornado. So there are still things I learned even after the derecho that we can do differently and improve on. But we definitely did learn a lot through that disaster, growing between those two. With the tornado, we work directly with the state primarily on a lot of our activities, the Iowa Homeland Security, Emergency Management, right? Yeah, that's what all the initials stand for. With the derecho, we're working directly with FEMA on projects. And so we had, as Jessica was talking about earlier, the volunteer network with the tornado was much more elaborate than the derecho. And you have to keep in mind, obviously, with the derecho, we were in the middle of COVID. And, so getting people to come together and work and show up and have shelter and all those kind of things was just a whole new challenge that, we didn't have during the tornado. So next slide. Trying to remember what we had next.
Yeah, I think, what I hope people recognize is the delays that we've had to see just because of, COVID being that third disaster at the same time we're recovering from the tornado, and then you have a derecho hit as well. And so we were very hard at work on in late 2019, getting things filed, getting people timelines so that we could get things into the court system, because we knew that's ultimately where a lot was going to end up if people hadn't started the process of repairs after 1 year. And so we had quite a few things in the pipeline, and then COVID shut down the court system. And so we basically had to sit there until we could see the courts open up again and start hearing some of the cases that we had, reschedule things. Instantly, as soon as they opened up, things were scheduling out 6 months. And so it was very frustrating on our end to know that we were following our processes and doing what we were supposed to do to try and see some change in our community, but it just wasn't happening because of COVID and what we had happening there. So, and that was kind of where things were sitting when the derecho hit in August. So, yeah, I'll let you take this map. Yeah.
So this is a little map of the downtown area. I think these are probably some of the most common ones that we get questions about because it's the most visible, right? Or a lot of us are driving up and down Main Street, you're working on Main Street or in the area, you're coming to eat and things like that. And so it's like, what's going on that corner? What's happening? And so there's a lot happening downtown and the city is involved in a lot of it. And as Jessica said, a lot of these are actually do go back to the tornado. Some of them had more of a derecho impact, but a lot of them did start with tornado damage. And so just kind of to highlight just the ones that we have bubbled here, 101 West Main Street, that is one that was impacted by the tornado directly and sat without any repair. Ultimately, we did go through a court system. It went through a change in ownership. The city now has control of that property. We're going to talk a little bit more about it. But that's one we're working on. Across the street from that, depending on your age, you'll identify it as either Beaners, Jilly's, Blue Note, or Ibiza is that corner. And we've got adjoining buildings next to it as well. That were all impacted. And so again, kind of impacted by the tornado initially, and then the derecho, many of you may recall, on the corner building just kind of ripped what was left of that roof right off and dropped it next door on the car in the parking on the street. So we have control of 2 of those properties now. And those are ones that we do have in queue with FEMA for demolition assistance. As well. So we are waiting to hear on whether or not that will be approved. 10 West Main Street is one where we all know the Fantles building, the corner to West Main Street was of course destroyed by the tornado. Ultimately, Tim Hoffman had took down his building adjacent to that. As demolition was mid progress, the derecho hit impacting 10 West Main Street. Commonly known for Jack's House. And so that one, the wall got pushed, the roof fell a few 6-8 inches when we placarded it about a month after the tornado. It's now dropped about 5 to 6 foot. And so we know that there's a serious issue. It's a property that the city now has control, again, through the court process that we had to go through that. We know that it is impacting the adjoining building next to it at 12 West Main. So those 2 are also ones that we have included in our potential project scope for FEMA, not knowing what will need to be the result of those, whether we'll lose them both entirely or partially, or what the options are. That's all still being figured out. 20 East Main Street is another one that we get a lot of questions about. It's we did have structural analysis of it. It's a Angel store in between the city center building and Bowman building, right? And so it's one that does not have structural issues, any significant structural issues, which is good. We hate to see a mid-block building have those issues. It is one that has some environmental things that we're concerned about. And we are working with the owner to try to resolve some of those. Ultimately, the city may have to take other action on that one. 24 North First Avenue is one that we have a pending court date with. That's a bakery building. The building to the north of it did come down. Owner took that down, but this one has been sitting since the tornado as well. They've attempted to do some repairs over time, but not been able to follow through with anything. And so we are pending legal action with that one. And then 21 West Main, another kind of mid-block building. You might recognize as there's the 3 buildings where Lily May was, this vacant space. Then the middle one at one point had been an insurance, and then now you've got like the tobacco vape shop there on the alleyway. Those 3 buildings are also very interconnected. similar to across the street. The middle building does have some structural damage to the back end. So fortunately, that's an area that could be resolved and taken care of without hopefully affecting the primary portion of the structure. But one, again, that we have a scheduled court date on because we haven't seen the action that we need. And so these are just some. I tell people now, I feel like I'm a building hoarder downtown. I know they're not mine, but I feel like I have this responsibility for a lot of these downtown buildings that you know, aren't something that the city really wants to be involved with. So I've gotten my rubber boots at good workout the past month or so. Next slide. So this is 101 West Main, Purple Cherry, for those of you who might most recently recall that. You can still recognize maybe some of the paint job and stuff. The roof has a major hole in it, actually kind of two portions that have collapsed, but the primary part is from the front. You drive by the building, walk by the building, you don't necessarily look at it and see that it has these problems. But I guarantee when you walk in, it has these problems. And of course, as Aaron knows, it's a significant issue. So the city ultimately did get control over this building, and we wanted to just kind of give you a little visual of that. We've had asbestos assessments done on the property, and of course we do have asbestos concerns throughout the property and materials, as well as significant structural issues to the second floor and the back third of the building. Next slide. And then this is across that street, as I said, that bar corner, 102 to 106 West Main Street. Again, very similar in nature, where we've got a roof that has failed and is impacting the property. This one, we have not completed any kind of asbestos assessments or anything yet. We recognize that there's a good chance that we will have to treat many of these buildings as kind of a completely hot, I'll call it, site, and that we'll have to do the demolition as a full asbestos demolition. Because it'll be really hard to abate these issues. You can't go in and abate and clean up a roof that has fallen in. You know, you can maybe clear out everything and treat the second floor as asbestos, but then you have to deal with the rest of the remaining stuff in the building. So that drives the prices up considerably in dealing with asbestos, which is something that we're, you know, mandated to do when we're talking about these demolition projects. Next slide.
So we wanted to talk about these two properties specifically because they both had insurance. I'm happy to say, Phyllis, neither were insured by State Farm. So there is this little known provision in state code that requires a demolition reserve to be set up under certain conditions. And so those conditions are that reserve should be the greater of $10,000 or 10% of the payment. So we generally expect when there's been a fire or something, you know, happen to a property that we're typically going to get notified of some sort of reserve. What we hadn't read was the finer print, which requires the property to be uninhabitable or unfit for the use that it was without repair. And then also requires a proof of loss to be submitted by the policyholder in an amount greater than 75% of the face value of the policy covering the building. And so we did not receive a reserve notice on either of these, but we knew that there was insurance involved. And I would say that we saw very few notices just generally after the tornado and derecho in total. And it was something that we had questioned, you know, why is this happening? And so once we took control of 101 and 102 West Main, the Iowa Insurance Division, who will be here next week, they have a very easy online form that you can go and submit a complaint. So I went online, submitted a complaint because I was mad. I wanted some money. So, and so what we learned was a very important thing that I think is something that we should be advocating for with our local or with our state representatives for the next legislative session. And so 101 West Main had proof of loss that were less than 75% of the face value of the policy, and therefore no reserve was required. And so there's a question there of, you know, is that something that, you know, is 75% too high? I have no idea. We know of one through legal documents that one of the proofs was about $240,000, and we do not know what the first one was following the tornado. We've not been able to identify that in any court records or anything else. And so you're talking about a pretty large proof of loss that was submitted on that, but we don't know what that total policy value was for the 75%. But the state assures me they looked at it and that no reserve was required. 102 was a little bit of a different situation in that after the tornado, their insurance company was out here. They did not require or did not wait for a proof of loss to be submitted on that property and just went ahead and cut the check for the value of the policy on the building and gave it to the owner. Because they did not require a proof of loss, therefore no reserve was set up. And when we learned that, that's where I got even more mad, because that gives basically the insurance companies under state code the ability to, when there's been a big disaster like a tornado, to just get out of paperwork requirements or other requirements for tracking what's being done to repair their insured properties and other things, but leaves communities basically left holding the tab for any work that needs to be done if an owner does, as was happened, took the money and did not reinvest it into the property. And so for quite some time, this actually goes back to my days when I was with the city of Clinton. We had an insured property where the demolition ended up being like $100,000. We got a $10,000 reserve. Is that really fair? And so there's been some legislation that's been out there over the years to change the 10% to 20% or 20,000, which I think would be a calculation that would certainly help. But it's the second part with that proof of loss requirement that I think is the thing that really needs to be focused on, and that we need to be actively working with our legislative delegation in the next year to see if we can affect some change there. Because there were a number of properties after the tornado that we kept hearing they got payment from their insurance company, and it was like a total loss type of thing, everything paid out, but we never got notified. And we don't think it was that insurance companies maybe weren't complying. It was that they took the route of, let's just write it off completely, pay it out, and then we don't have to worry about this. So what's next? There is hope. There is a vision here. So 101 West Main is not going to be a FEMA project, which puts it in a whole different category with some of the other properties that were on the map up there. And so we will be talking about this again with the city council probably at the end of the month. We did present a structural report, but there is the desire to look at what would be a repair cost to basically save 2/3 of the first floor, because the structural engineer said basically the whole second floor and the back third of the first floor need to go. They're not savable. So what is the cost to save what you can save per the structural engineer, and what is the cost to demolish? And we'll be bringing that information back to the city council at the end of the month. We also have more legal cases that are pending. We have quite a few court dates in September of this year, which will help determine the outcome of some other downtown buildings. And we, of course, have more notices to be sent. And so there is still a lot of work to be done. I would say that the derecho just complicated the work to be done, and in some cases provided another excuse for property owners who had not actively been working on their properties prior to the derecho to request more time and for us to try and be lenient to a certain extent. So demolition, I think that if FEMA says yes to the projects that we have submitted to demolition, I don't think you'll see much happening in 2021, just because of the processes that we have to go through and the steps that we have to follow. If FEMA says no, I think that we're going to move as quickly as possible to get all of these buildings down as quickly as we can, so that we don't have this blight that remains in the community. However, for 85% funding, I think we can live with it just a little bit longer if that's something that is available. So that's kind of where we stand right now. We wanted to focus more on downtown than probably the broader community, just because that's where we tend to get more questions. And there is a path forward, and it's one that we're moving down right now. So any questions? Yeah. So the question was, can the city go after the individuals who had the insurance money to try and recover some of that? And the answer is no, not with the way that we have done it. And I do want to explain kind of the methodology and the thinking here. So what we did is we used a process in Iowa Code Chapter 657A to declare these buildings abandoned, which then puts it before the courts to basically wipe out all liens on the properties and give them to us, free and clear of anything on them. which is a great way to be able to resell something. Our alternative, which we did try on 101. So 101, when we went after that, it was not owned by the person who had the insurance payout. So they had sold it shortly after we had started our notice process. And in that process, then they basically removed themselves because we could not pursue them for that any further. They were no longer the owner of the building. But our alternative process is to file a municipal infraction, which does mean it gets into the court system. And, you know, a judge can grant a municipal infraction. We had one granted on 101 West Main, which basically with an order that gave the new owner 90 days to basically demolish the property. The new owner lived in Humboldt, and we'd never seen him, never met him, had never made any appearances, did not show up in any court appearances. We were unable to serve him through the Humboldt County Sheriff or a private server. And so therefore we had just basically this almost non-existent building owner. What we could have done is we could have continued with that process. We could have taken down the building, used our order for demolition, and basically then put a lien on the property for the cost of the demolition. Now, if it was the original owner, we could have then gone after them in court to basically recover those funds and get a judgment. For anybody who's ever tried to collect on a judgment, especially one that would probably be in 6 figures or more, it's not a very easy thing. Some of these properties already had 6-figure judgments and other things on them as well. And so as we looked at what are the alternatives, the city owns it outright, free and clear of liens, or we try to get a judgment on somebody, but we have a vacant lot that has a giant lien on it as well if we don't get any judgment money back. And then is really something no one will ever be able to buy or develop with that lien on it. We thought the quicker route was going the abandoned building route and wiping things out. So there was kind of some calculations that we thought, let's try the municipal infraction route and see what happens. We thought we could maybe see something happen with that. And we learned that no, we'll get an order to demolish it. It's like, why would we demolish it if we don't own it? Because it's just going to leave this lot that is going to sit there and be empty and basically be a festering sore in our downtown. So we wanted to have development in our own power and to be able to control that. And that's really sort of the route that we took, knowing that we couldn't recover funds or try to proceed with getting a judgment against any building owner. Yeah, so I can tell you that so far this year, we have torn down 3. I have a bid out for another 4, or have a contract out for another 4. We'll hopefully be adding a change order to it. And we're using that same abandoned building process there as well. So we had quite a few that were in the pipeline, but COVID also gave us a chance to sort of catch up and getting some of those initial notices out to start some conversations with owners. And so that's the route that we're going. We also have the public nuisance tax sale that's coming up, where we could end up with some additional tax certificates off of that. So we do have money, but our money is limited. It's mostly based off of a bond from a number of years ago, 2015. And so that's been one of the things the city council is going to have to talk about is we need, especially for the FEMA demolitions, whether FEMA is participating or not, we're going to need to borrow more money to be able to take down these buildings because there is not sort of a funding source for that. We do sell some lots and we put that money back into the same fund, but selling lots at $1,000 doesn't really compare to the $20,000 to $40,000 cost to take down a property. Yeah, I think we took down nine properties last year, and I would say we're probably on track to take down 12 this year. Okay. Thank you.
And we thank you for your presentation today. We're going to keep the conversation going next week with our speaker, Sonia Selmeyer from the State of Iowa Insurance Department. And her topic is the derecho. So be sure to come on back next Tuesday. Please rise and join me in repeating the 4-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? I now declare our meeting adjourned.